Have you ever felt like there's some kind of invisible force field around a courthouse? You know, the one that makes judges seem almost untouchable? Well, you're not imagining things. That shield is very real, and it has a name: judicial immunity. Today, we're going to break down exactly what it is, how it works, and what it really means for accountability.
I mean, it's a question pretty much everyone asks at some point, right? You get a court decision that seems totally off the rails, maybe even feels malicious, and your first thought is, I should be able to sue for this. But as you've probably guessed, that path is almost always blocked. And the reason why is this incredibly powerful legal doctrine we're talking about today.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll define this force field and what it's all about. Then, we're going to get into the single most important rule that governs it. It's called the function test. After that, we'll see who else gets this protection, and finally, we'll walk through a really practical playbook for how to think about this in the real world.
Okay, let's dive right in. What exactly is this force field protecting the court?
So the first thing to get straight is that this is not about putting judges above the law. It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. Really, it's a very specific tool designed to do one main thing: block lawsuits that ask for money from a judge because of a decision they made. The whole idea is to let judges make tough rulings without constantly looking over their shoulder, terrified of being sued by everyone who loses a case. And you can see here, the system's goal is to get those lawsuits for money damages shut down, and shut down fast. It's basically designed to redirect you. So instead of suing the judge personally, the system pushes you toward what are called process remedies. You know, the built-in tools like filing an appeal, making motions in your case, or filing a disciplinary complaint. And here's the real kicker. This shield works even if you claim the judge acted maliciously or was just flat out wrong. All right, let's get to the absolute heart of this whole topic. Seriously, if you remember just one thing from this explainer, make it this: the function test. This is the master key that unlocks how all of this immunity stuff really works.
And here it is. This is the big aha moment. Immunity isn't permanently attached to a person's job title. It's all about what they were doing at that exact moment. Were they acting like a judge? Or were they acting like an office manager? Or were they just acting on their own time? That answer changes literally everything. Let's break it down with these 4 zones. In Zone 1, when a judge is doing judicial acts, making rulings, issuing orders, just managing their courtroom, their immunity is absolute, total force field. Same goes for Zone 2, for court integral acts, where non-judges are basically helping the court do its job. The shield is super strong there too. But look at Zone 3, for administrative acts like hiring or firing staff. Suddenly, that shield gets a whole lot weaker. And in Zone 4, for personal conduct outside of their job, well, that force field pretty much disappears.
So keeping that function test in mind, let's see how this actually plays out for different people you might run into in the legal systems. These 2 Supreme Court cases show the dividing line perfectly. On the left, in Morales v. Waco, a judge ordered court officers to go out and physically bring an attorney to his courtroom, using force if necessary. The Supreme Court said, hey, that's about managing his court. It's a judicial act, so he was immune. But on the right, in Forster v. White, a judge fired a probation officer. The court said, nope, that's an administrative act. He was acting like a boss, not a judge. For that, he was not immune. See? Same person, different functions, completely different outcome. And just to understand how unbelievably strong this protection is for judicial acts, listen to this quote from another huge Supreme Court case. The court said a judge is absolutely immune, even if you allege the act was malicious, corrupt, or legally wrong. That quote really says it all. For anything that counts as a judicial act, it's an almost unbreakable shield. Now, this force field doesn't just protect judges. The court can actually extend a judge-like shield to other people. It's called quasi-judicial immunity. Quasi is just a fancy word for sort of or almost, and this covers non-judges when they're acting as an essential arm of the court. So who are we talking about here? Well, think of people acting on the court's behalf. Guardians ad litem who investigate for a judge, parenting coordinators trying to resolve disputes under a court order, or psychologists appointed to do an evaluation. Even court clerks when they're just filing documents, or witnesses when they're giving testimony, they're all protected for those specific court-directed actions.
Okay, so we've covered the theory, the why, and the how. Now let's get to the main event, the practical playbook. How do you actually apply all this to a real situation?
I want you to think of it like passing through these 3 gates. You have to ask 3 questions. First, Gate 1. What do you want? Are you asking for money? Because that's a huge red flag for immunity. Second, Gate 2. Who are you targeting? Is it a judge or someone with maybe a weaker shield? And finally, Gate 3. What's the specific action? And we're right back to that all-important function test. Your answers to these 3 questions will tell you pretty quickly if an immunity defense is going to shut you down. So this is the big question, isn't it? If that front door, suing for money, is locked and bolted, where do you go? Does that just mean there's no accountability at all? Well, not exactly. It just means you have to find a different set of keys.
And these are the keys the system actually wants you to use. If a judge made a legal mistake, you appeal their decision. If a court appointee, like a GAL, oversteps their bounds, you file a motion to challenge them right there in the case. If a professional acts unethically, you report them to their licensing board, like the state bar. And maybe most importantly, you build the record. You get every single objection down on the official transcript, because that paper trail is the only thing an appeals court or a disciplinary board will ever look at.
So if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. The number one most important strategic shift is to stop thinking about suing the person for money and start thinking about how to use the procedural tools that are already built into the system. That is where the real power for accountability actually lies. And that really leaves us with the central debate here, the core tension of this entire doctrine. Is judicial immunity a necessary shield that lets judges make tough, independent calls without fear of going broke? Or has it become a barrier that sometimes gets in the way of true accountability when things really go wrong? The answer? Well, it's complicated, and it's something the legal system is still grappling with every single day.